All right, so good morning, everyone. It is 10 o'clock and we are going to go ahead and get started. And today we are going to be talking about buyer agency agreements. So can you guys see my screen okay? Yep, all right, just making sure. This is the buyer agency agreement. It is the exclusive right to represent the buyer. This is the form that needs to be filled out and signed prior to ever stepping foot into the home, before showing a home. This needs to be signed by the buyer. And keep in mind that this is not enforceable until your broker signs it. So the best practice here would be to send it to the buyer via DocuSign. And as soon as the buyer signs it, set it up so that your broker is the next person in line. So that way the broker will get it last at the minute that your clients are done signing. It will then go straight to the broker. If you happen to be doing wet signatures on it and your broker is not in the office or wherever you have them sign it, get it over to your broker the same day or as fast as possible so that they can sign it instantly as well. Okay. All right, so this is found in zip forms and under the NVAR library, which is the Northern Virginia Association of Realtors library. And so what you're going to do is you're going to go through this form and you're going to fill it out. So one of the things I want to show you is when you click on a box, see how it wants an actual date here. So we'll put a date, but let's just go to this box here. See, this box right here wants you to put in a name. One of the things you can do is, we have to do that further down, sorry. If ever you need to put a name in or it wants actual letters and you want to put numbers, all you have to do is hit your space bar and it's going to override it. And I'll be able to show you that on another line here in a minute. So you're going to put in your date and then you're going to put in whoever your buyer is, your buyer's names. So you want to make sure that the names are legal, like an example being, my legal name is Deborah Ellis, not Deb Ellis. So you would put in Deborah Ellis in this case, okay? And then the firm name, of course, is Coldwell Banker Elite. Okay, so this is where I know it says broker. This is not your actual broker. This is the name of the firm, which is Coldwell Banker Elite, obviously. When you're going through this with them, you want to summarize every paragraph the best that you can. And so as you're summarizing them, obviously, you don't want to read to them. That's a little bit insulting. So you want to summarize each paragraph. And then paragraph 1 here just basically says that they are retaining the broker to represent them in the purchase of their home. Plain and simple, okay? Then here under notices, you're going to need to know the buyer's information. You're going to need to fill out their actual mailing address and a telephone number, as well as an email address. We need as much information here as possible. If for whatever reason they won't give you any of this information, I'd be a little bit leery as to why they won't give you their contact information, because at that point, they might be wanting to do you harm and we don't want that to happen. So make sure that you can get as much information as possible. We use that information if something were to happen to you. Let's just say Rachel ends up going out of town unexpectedly and we as the firm need to contact the buyer for any reason. We have that readily and available, okay? We also send surveys. So this is why we also need the email address, okay? So that they can tell us how amazing and wonderful you guys are, and then you guys can brag about yourselves. Broker firm right here, this paragraph right here, this is your actual office. So you're going to put whatever office you're aligned with, you're going to put the address there. The phone number would be the office phone number. And then when you see the cell and the email address, that is not your cell or your email address. Now, if you would like to be a broker, by all means, let's talk. Okay. We can put you on a path to be a managing broker. But what you need to put for the email and for the cell phone is your managing broker's information. And the reason why it needs to be that way is so that this particular client knows who to contact if there's a problem or if they cannot reach you as the agent. It has to be given to them on the front page. Okay. So please make sure you put the broker's cell phone and the broker's email address. So number 4 here is your term and your termination. So this is how long are we going to work together, buyer? Are 3 months, 7 months, 5 years, however long it is. We say usually about 3 months is about good for a broker or for a buyer, especially in this market right now. This allows you time to make sure that you and the buyer are meshing and everything, you guys are getting along really well and everything is going to the best of everyone's direction. So make sure that under term and condition, you put an actual date, not 3 months. You need to put an actual date. So March 15th or whatever the date would be is what you would put there. Under here where it says that if the buyer terminates without due cause, that the broker is due so much in compensation. This is the early termination fee. How much are you going to charge a buyer if they terminate this agreement early? Most agents put NA, meaning I'm not going to charge you anything. However, if you want to be an agent that says, you know what, I'm going to charge a buyer for terminating early, make sure you put that in there. Okay. And then just keep in mind that they don't pay you directly. They pay the firm and then the firm pays you. Okay. Any questions on that yet? No. All right, good. All right, so then here under broker's duties, this is what the broker's going to do for the buyer. This is where you need to go into a lot more detail as to, hey buyer, I'm going to promote all your best interests. Remember your fiduciary duties from your pre-licensing class? You're going to go through all of those. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to tell you everything that I know about the home, whether you know, it's good, bad, and the ugly. I'm going to tell you because that's my job. I am going to perform to all of the terms to this agreement, meaning I am going to make sure that we hit our deadlines. I'm going to show you properties that you tell me you want to see. Okay. We're going to seek properties that are at your buying power that you tell me you want, not anything more. So an example being, if your buying power is 500, but you tell me you only want to see homes that are 400 or less, I'm only going to show you homes that are 400 and less, unless you tell me to go higher. If your buying power is only at 500, we are not going to exceed that 500. Okay, so you want to make sure that you explain that, because a lot of times buyers come to us and they say, oh, but I just want to see this house. It looks so cute. No, we don't show homes just because someone thinks a house looks cute. Okay.
What about if there's a house that's close and you think they could offer less than their
So it depends on your market. That's a great question, Rachel. It depends on your market. Right now, obviously, a couple months ago, we were not seeing anything like that, right? We were not seeing where if the house was offered at 500 and the buyer could only do 490, where sellers were coming down. They were actually expecting higher. We are still kind of currently in that position where the houses are being priced at a point where sellers are expecting that list price. Not all markets are like that. So it's going to depend on the market, but it's very, very dangerous to play that game with a buyer because you don't know the seller's story. So example being, the seller might have a house listed at 500 and your buyer can only do 490 and you think you can negotiate it down that 10K. What if the buyer falls in love with that and the seller says, absolutely not, I have to make that 500, right? So it becomes a little bit of a risk for you. So just be very careful if you're going to go down that road. And I would encourage you to talk that strategy out with your broker, because every client in every scenario is a little bit different. So it's really going to depend on that particular purchaser, what their needs are, and that specific listing. Does that make sense? Okay, great. All right. You're going to disclose to the buyer any and all material facts that you know about the property, meaning anything you see. So this would be, you would say, hey buyer, this means that as we're walking through a home, one of the things I'm going to do is say, see that mark on the ceiling? That could be indicative of a possible water leak or roof leak. So what we need to do now is we're going to need to make sure that when the home inspector comes through the home, that he really investigates that roof well. And if he sees any kind of possible roof damage, we would then ask for the home to have a roof inspection, okay, by a professional roofer. Remember what your material defects are, things that you can see and things that you should know about the home. All right. So these will be the things that you'll want to let the buyer know. I'm going to point these things out to you, not because I'm trying to deter you from purchasing the home. I just want you to know what my trained eye is seeing. Okay. Everything needs to be accounted for in a timely manner. This is where I also tell the buyer, hey, if we're asking you for documents, if we're asking you for anything, we probably needed it 2 days ago. So time is always of the essence. So I need you to give me things like very fast. Example being, once we ratify, you have 3 days to hand me the earnest money deposit, because that's how we're going to write our contract. And if we write it for 3 days, I need that money in my hands by 3 days so that we can deposit it. I'm going to need to account for everything to keep your best interest at heart, your money, as well as all of the documents, as well as pushing all the documents to the proper people, like your attorney that's going to represent you, as well as your lender who's going to help finance you. This is also where we're going to discuss with them that if there's any kind of release that happens, or release of any kind of information, that the broker has to maintain confidentiality. This is where I will always mention that confidentiality is 100% key, and that confidentiality remains between you as the agent and only your broker, and that's it. So guys, just as a reminder, the water cooler talks, the talks in the conference room around the round tables that we hear, you're breaking your client's confidentiality. And this is in the buyer agreement that we will keep that confidentiality at all times. Okay. So make sure that you're not enforcing that, you are emphasizing that with your buyers. Okay. Any questions on the broker's duties? I also like to point out in this paragraph, you're going to hear it said again, but I also like to point out in this paragraph that not only is everything confidential, everything is legally binding. That them signing this is a legally binding agreement between the firm and themselves for us to represent them solely us. They can't go around and shop around other agents at this point. Okay, so the buyer's duties, again, are to work exclusively with the broker, meaning us. They're not going to go to another agent at another firm. They're going to work directly with us. They're going to pay the broker the compensation that we have earned. If the compensation is not offered in the MLS, then that's when they would pay. And usually what I say to them at that point is, we're going to get into that in the compensation paragraph. Okay. I like to talk about that they comply with all reasonable efforts, kind of like what we just talked about with the broker's duties. I kind of try to push those two paragraphs into one, all right? Because it flows a much easier for me when I kind of push them together as one, as these are the broker's duties, these are your duties, all at the same time, okay? All right, so number 7 under purpose right here. This one is, why is this buyer retaining this broker? Why is the buyer retaining us as a firm and you as the agent? And it's not just as simple as to find residential property. Okay, so when we as brokers see that in line 7, we're going to reject those. We're going to call you up and say, hey, you got to fix that. Because what that means is, when you say to find residential property, that means anywhere in the state of Virginia. That means that you are now willing to travel anywhere in the state of Virginia. So I'm going to pick on Jeffrey for a minute here. So Jeffrey puts residential property, and somebody calls him up and says that they want to see property down in Lynchburg. Well, Jeffrey doesn't have access to the MLS. That's all the way down in Lynchburg. Maybe it's a different lockbox, different contract type. He is now in an article violation of practicing outside the scope of his area. Okay, so you've got to keep that in mind. Also, the buyer, because remember, this is legally binding both ways. So if you put residential property and the buyer all of a sudden says, I'm going to go down to Lynchburg, and Jeffrey's like, yeah, I don't service Lynchburg, the buyer can pull this out and say, too bad, you said you'd go anywhere in the state of Virginia. Okay. So what you really need to do for your purpose here is, for the purpose, should say something along the lines of Stafford County, Spotsylvania County, King George County, Orange County, wherever you are willing to travel to. I see some agents put 50 miles from office location, right? So that's a pretty specific area to this area. Put exactly the areas that you're willing to go to. If there's someone that is saying that they only want to retain you to see this one specific house on Main Street, then you put just that address for 123 Main Street. Okay. Any questions on this? We tend to get a lot of questions on that paragraph. Okay, very good. All right, so then the compensation paragraph. So in the compensation paragraph, this is where we're going to talk about if we're going to have a retainer fee. So remember at the beginning, I said that if it's asking for a number, but maybe I want to like hit NA, I'm going to hit my space bar and see how that just turned green. I can now type in NA. Okay, so if there's ever a paragraph like this one, you don't want to leave it just blank. Okay, you want to just put in there NA. I'm not going to hold a retainer fee. All right. If you are going to hold a retainer fee, we don't hold them, but if you ever decided you wanted to, you need to talk to Kevin, Matthew, or myself first. And then you would put an actual dollar figure in there. Otherwise, NA is your best bet. So when you get down to B though, B is the payment. This is how much the buyer is going to compensate. Yes, Carly.
Question, do you prefer us putting NA versus 0 for the retainer fee?
NA just means that you're not holding one. It doesn't matter. There's really no preference as to NA versus 0. My example there was more of for other lines also. Make sure you're putting NA. So it doesn't really, either way works.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So payment right here. What is our payment going to be? So this is where we need to talk to Nixie.
Yes, on the retainer fees, if someone had let's say $500, either there or on early termination, what will happen with those $50 to $500? I know they have to write the check to the company, but the company will refund the agent in the entire amount or part of it.
No, it is done at the agent's split.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So payment right here under payment. This is where you're going to put what percentage are you willing to work for as a buyer agent. So if you say per MLS, and then your buyer decides to go to new construction, and the new construction listing is not in the MLS, how much commission is the brokerage allowed to collect on your behalf?
Zero.
Who answered that?
Jeff.
Good job, Jeff. That's absolutely right. We are legally only allowed to collect 0 because you put per MLS and it was not in the MLS. Okay. Same thing with a for sale by owner. What if the compensation in the MLS was only $1, which we have seen happen? Literally $1 in the MLS. That means that you're now willing to work for $1 and you're going to split $1 with the firm on top of the franchise fee. Are you guys willing to do that? No. Okay. I'm like looking for heads shaking. No, obviously no, right? We're not willing to do that. So that means then that what we need to do is put an actual percentage in there that you are willing to work for. If you say 2.5%, but the MLS offers 3, are we allowed to collect 3? Yes, we are. Okay. So usually what we see in there is percentage of minimum 2.5%, minimum of 2%, whatever you are happy with working for. So you also need to add in this paragraph plus $375 base fee, that $375 base fee. Even though you're going to have the client sign the base fee form, that is just the disclosure for the buyer so that they understand what that fee is. We have to have it in this payment paragraph under the compensation because that's what gives us permission to collect it. Does that make sense?
What does that base fee, does that get paid by, if it is in the MLS and the seller is paying the agent commission, do they also pay that $375 or is that just paid
No,
by?
the buyer pays that. The
Okay.
buyer will pay that, correct. Unless it is a VA loan.
Okay.
VA loans do not pay the base fee. All right. So again, when you fill out this paragraph, if your broker doesn't see a base fee and there are no notes anywhere saying this is a VA loan, the broker should be calling you before they sign it and say, hey, I don't see the base fee, or send you a text. Okay?
How do you explain the base fee?
Have to say minimum 2.5.
Like you personally, what is the script that you would use?
So you guys are going to have the base fee form. And so we'll go to, you know what, let's do that at the end.
Okay.
Because I want to pull up the base fee form for you. Have you seen the form yet, Carly?
Yes, I have.
Okay, has everybody here seen the form? I'm not sure everyone here has seen the form. Let's just go to that now. Let me just go to that now. So that's going to be under your Coldwell Banker Elite Library, compensation disclosure. What's going on here in the chat? Yes, okay. Okay, so for those of you who have not seen it, here is your compensation disclosure form that they have to pay. I can tell you, I get this question a lot, is how do you disclose this? I just tell them what it is. I pull this form right out at that time that we're talking about it, and basically just say, here's a form that explains it, but this is a commission-based payment of the $375 that you pay on top of the commission that is offered. This is not a shared fee with the agent, that this goes directly to the firm. I don't usually get questions on it. And I think the reason being is because when I actually do, let me go back to the paragraph. When I actually do the whole paragraph, I usually do something along the lines of payment. So the payment that I receive, as you know, Mr. or Mrs. Buyer, I get paid on commission, and I don't get paid until the deal closes. So we're going to talk about the payment of the compensation paragraph. And what that is that's a percentage of the sale. The percentage of the sale goes to my firm, which then also is how we get paid as a firm. I am willing to accept what is in the MLS, which is usually 2.5%, as long as that's what's offered in the MLS. If the MLS has anything less than 2.5%, or if you choose to go to a for sale by owner purchaser, at that point, I am still due my compensation, and you as the buyer would have to pay that compensation. Buyer, I do not show you a home without your knowledge of you having to pay that extra compensation. So an example being, if you were to go to a builder and the builder only offered, let's just say $1, I would let you know ahead of time, hey, in order for me to show you this home and represent you, you are going to have to pay the commission. Then I usually move into, we also have what we call a $375 base fee, which is which varies from, oh, sorry, I don't say it that way. I usually say we also have a $375 base fee, and that covers administrative things behind the scenes. And then I just move on. Okay. It's a very simple, easy thing. I think I saw Robin. Robin, I did see you on here. Robin, how do you say that? Because I'm not flowing with how I'm saying it.
Very similar to that. I like to specify, as an example, Zoom. I feel like COVID did give us that little gift, and I use it as, I say that it is a fee that is not part of the commission. It doesn't come to me. It goes to the brokerage completely, and it helps cover all the extra administrative costs that we continually see added to our ability to do our job. And then I use Zoom as an example, that 3 years ago, we didn't need Zoom because all meetings were done in person. And once we had COVID, all of a sudden Zoom was a requirement, and it's several $1,000s a year for the brokerage to offer it to the agents so that we can communicate with them. And everybody seems to understand using that as an example. So
yeah, I never thought about using a specific example like that, but you know, I just bring out the, you know, it's to cover all the behind the scenes costs that are being incurred by the firm. Just kind of leave it like that. So good.
Yeah.
Thanks, Robin. Did
Sure.
that help you,
Deborah?
Carly?
Hey, Deborah.
Yes, and I
Maybe.
remember Robin sharing about the Zoom example too. And so I'm just curious how like everyone approaches it and what all is said.
The simpler, the better. I have found that agents that get very wordy with it are the agents that get the most pushback.
That makes sense.
It's also when you're not confident about it is when you get the pushback. So like if I were to say 2.5% and a 375 base fee, are you okay with that, Carly? Are you good with that? Right? I mean, when you approach it that way, of course, as the buyer, you're going to be like, wait, time out, right? Versus just speaking with confidence of it's 2.5% on top of a 375 base fee. You know, I will show you homes that meet this criteria. The 375 base fee you pay, that will be part of your closing costs. And what that covers is that will cover then behind the scenes added fees. Maybe I would throw in like Zoom that we as a firm have incurred. And then I just keep going on. And then I move on to if within so many days, right?
Okay.
So it becomes very, very fluid, right? So the more you practice it, the better you'll be able to say it. Malone, I say your name wrong every single time, and I'm sorry, it's because I'm looking at how it's written.
That's all right. Hey, you is good too. No, I've only had it ever questioned once, and not even questioned. They were just kind of asking. And I said, "Do you ever go out and buy a car and not get away with administration fee? Ever? Thousands of dollars, thousands of dollars." I said, "So we're not asking for that. Just this."
That
It
is
worked.
true.
Yeah, it
That
worked.
is true. But yeah, it's definitely, the compensation paragraph. Well, let me finish the if within period time frame, and then I'll go through like the whole paragraph at once. So if within so many days after expiration date, this varies from agent to agent, right? I see some agents put 2 days. I see some agents put 375 days. What this is basically saying in this particular paragraph is that once our buyer agency agreement is terminated and ends, if you go and purchase a home that I had already shown you, I am eligible to get my commission because I'm the one that showed you that home. Okay. That's basically what that says. Now, here's how I do this whole paragraph. When it comes to payment, I say, buyer, what we're basically saying here is that obviously I don't work for free. So 2.5% of the purchase price will be what my commission is, will be what my compensation is. However, I'm going to show you homes that are offered in the MLS. Typically, the seller will pay for those. If the seller pays the commission, that's fantastic. You don't have to pay anything. If the seller says, I'm not paying a commission, I will tell you prior to showing you that home, because that means that you as the buyer would have to pay that my commission, my compensation. You would know prior to ever seeing a home that you would have to pay part of that percentage. Now, this 375 base fee, this is a base fee that goes strictly to Coldwell Banker Elite, and that covers a lot of the hidden costs and the administration fees that the company has. Hey, buyer, if within 180 days, I like 180 days. If within 180 days, you decide to purchase a home that I had shown you with a different realtor, this is just saying that I'm due my compensation because I represented you in showing you that home. Then I go right on into the relocation paragraph. Okay, so you see how that just kind of flowed all kind of together? Okay. Any questions about any of that? No. So all of this agreement and all of your contracts, I would encourage you guys to really spend a lot of time presenting them out loud. Doesn't matter if you're presenting it to yourself, to the dog, the cat, the bird, whoever, no one, it doesn't really matter. The more you talk it out loud and hear yourself, the more fluid it's going to become for you. All right. And it'll become much easier for you to talk about, and you'll become a whole lot more comfortable with it. Okay. All right, so paragraph 9, this is where you're going to ask the client, are you part of any kind of relocation company or any kind of relocation program? This includes Navy Fed. This includes your company might have a relocation package for you. Do you have any of these? If they say no, you check no. If they say, oh yeah, I'm a Navy Fed member, you would then check yes and fill it out. Okay, have them fill it out. If they say they are Navy Fed and they have not entered themselves into the rewards program, you should tell them to hold off, that you will enter them into the rewards program. You do not have to be relo in order to do that. They have earned that benefit. They deserve their benefit. So you can enter them in, and that will protect them from getting to work with you. So example being Robin. Robin's not part of relo. And Robin's working with someone, and she asks them, are you part of any kind of relocation program? That could be any kind of corporate program that your company has. It could be the Navy Fed program. And they say, oh yeah, I'm a Navy Fed member. I am part of that program, and I do want my benefit. Well, then that's when Robin would say, that's fantastic. And thank you for your service. And so I'm going to check yes here. We're going to fill this out. And by the way, buyer, do not enter yourself into the program, because I want to protect our relationship. I don't want them to assign you to a different agent. So let me enter you into the program. There's a couple of benefits there, but the biggest one is that you get to protect the client working with you, as well as the referral fees a little bit less that you put them in. Okay. You must ask them. You can't just skip that over and assume it's a no. All right, so number 10, types of real estate transactions. This is going to talk about your dual and your designated and your dual. And this is where you need to get really clear with what designated is versus dual. And you yourself need to know your business practices. My personal business practice is I do not do dual. I do not believe in doing dual, and I won't do dual. I think it's evil, and I wish the state would get rid of it. And the majority of the cases that go in front of DPOR or any kind of a court system and dual is involved, the majority, and I mean like high majority, like 90+%, 99%, end up and not in favor of the agent. Okay, because when you do dual, that means that you're somehow looking out for both parties, but how are you really looking out for both parties? How are you telling a seller, I'm going to get you top dollar, and then turn around and tell a buyer, I'm going to get this house for you as low as possible, right? Someone's losing out. All right. So this is where we need to explain what designated and dual is. This is where you would say, hey buyers, so designated representation means that I would represent just you, but anybody in Coldwell Banker Elite could represent the seller, meaning that paths don't really cross. We don't share information, because remember, we talked about confidentiality. So we're not going to share any kind of information. So what we're going to do here is we are going to keep everything separate. And you're going to kind of want us to say yes on designated. And the reason being is we're Coldwell Banker Elite. We have a lot of listings out there. If you tell me no to designated, that means I can't show you any of the listings that we have out there. And and we kind of have market share. It's a lot of listings. So usually they're like, oh yeah, I'm good with that, because it's two totally different people, right? Dual representation is when I represent the seller and I represent the buyer. Okay, so this is where I tell the buyer, so dual representation means I would represent the buyer and I would represent the seller. It's easy when you say, I don't do that, so I can check no. But unless you're a broker, your brokers always have to check yes, because your brokers oversee all of the contracts, right? So your brokers always check yes. If you're going to be someone that says, yes, I'll do dual, please get with your brokers and make sure that what you're doing and what you're saying is truly on the up and up, because there are lines you just cannot cross. Okay. It becomes very hard. You basically are saying at a home inspection, I don't know what you should ask for. Right? So you're doing a home inspection and you're dual, and the buyer's going, well, what should I ask for? You have to say, you have to tell me what to ask for. Rachel?
If you have a buyer that is interested in one of your listings, you're not doing dual. And so you would give it to another agent then in the same brokerage?
Yeah. So what I personally do, and I've seen a lot of other agents do, is if I have a listing and somebody calls, let's just say on a sign call, right? They drive by on a sign call and they want to see the property. I will give them information over the phone that's like, oh, it's this many bedrooms, and oh, the roof was replaced this year, and oh, the HVAC, et cetera. I tell them about the home. I'm selling the home to them. And if they say, yeah, I'm really interested in seeing it, I tell the person that called, I'll say, hey, I don't do dual. So I can either show you the home and just point out features and not have any conversations about strategy or anything deeper than that. Or I can ask another agent to show you the home, which would be in your best interest. And then I pass it on to another agent. If it is a buyer I had already been working with, I do the same exact thing. And when I pass the buyer over to, let's just say, in this case, I'm passing the buyer over to Enoch. And I will call Enoch and say, hey, I have a buyer interested in my listing. If they purchase this home, you can work with the buyer and I'll just take a referral fee. If they don't purchase the home, then I would like the buyer back. Okay. Now the buyer might fall in love with Enoch and be like, you know, that Deb's crazy. I really like your personality better, Enoch. And that's fine too. I would say, okay, that's fine. I still get a referral for referring the buyer to you. Okay. Or, you know, some agents say just take the buyer. It depends on your business model and your practice. And when you get put in those situations, I would talk to your broker and see what is in the best interest. And we'll throw a couple different scenarios your way to see what's in the best interest. If you decide to do the referral, we have a form that needs to be filled out. So to make sure that everything's on the up, not up and up, but to make sure that at the end of the day, when it closes, we know what the agreement was upfront. Okay. So if the agreement upfront was a 25% referral, then when it closes, all of a sudden there's a dispute over the 25% referral. We have a document that's signed from both agents. If we don't have that signed document and a dispute happens, we as brokers do not get in the middle of it. Okay. We need that signed document. And it's the same thing if you go on vacation or you're going to be out and you need another agent to cover for you for a little bit. There is a form for you to actually spell out the terms of what's being covered and what the compensation will be. So once again, if at the end, like things change and someone had a different impression, we as the brokers can go based off of what was written. Okay. Makes sense? Yeah. All right. So make sure with dual, you're very clear. Now, I do want to point out that a lot of times we put ourselves in a dual scenario and we don't even realize it. And that is when we show the same house to two buyers that are interested in writing offers on the same house. Okay. So you have to be very careful, especially when we're in a market where the inventory is low. You have to be very careful with the conversations that you have because, you know, I might be working with, let's just say Robin and Lisa. And in the process of me working with Robin and Lisa, they both all of a sudden want to see 123 Main Street. So I show the house to Robin and Robin's like, oh my gosh, I love this house. I need to get with my lender. I'm going to do that this afternoon and see if we can change up a couple of my lending terms so that I can get into this house. Fantastic. You go do that, Robin. Let me know what, Nick Bond says. So Robin's off doing her own thing. In the meantime, Lisa comes into the office and says, I saw a sign at 123 Main Street. I want to go see it. So we sign this agency agreement and off we go. And we're now looking at 123 Main Street. And Lisa's like, I want to write an offer. I'm now in a bad position, right? Because I have two people interested in the same house. How am I going to tell them what's going to be competitive, right? I basically have to have them give me the info. I can provide them with comps and say, here are the comps for the neighborhood, as long as I'm providing both of them with the comps, and then let them pick a price. But in dual, I can't sit there and tell Robin she should offer 500 and then tell Lisa she should offer 525, right?
At that point, you're disclosing to both your clients the situation though, right?
Absolutely. You absolutely need to make sure both clients know that you have multiple people interested in you writing on two homes. I will tell you that when this happens this has happened in Stafford, and when this happens in the Stafford office, the agents usually come to me and say, can you take one? So that way they truly, and what I do as the broker. So feel free, if this ever happens to you guys, feel free to call me or ask your broker if they're willing to do this. I take one of the clients, I write the offer. This way the agent is completely neutral in the writing. And then like if the one I wrote won, I pass it right back to the agent. Okay. So like in this case, let's just say Robin's offer won. but, and she had me as Deb write it, I would then pass Robin right back to the agent that originally represented her. Okay. It keeps the agent kind of in a little bit more of a neutral ground area. Okay. I'm willing to do that. Ask your brokers if they're willing to do that. That would kind of remove you from being in that bad pickle of a spot. Okay. Especially if you've already had conversations with one buyer over what your strategy would be for writing. Okay. That's usually when things can get really bad. Okay. And I know Robin's on the call, and I know Robin would be willing to help you guys out in that aspect also, because really all we're doing is we're writing. We're just writing an offer. Okay. All right. Any questions on that? All right. All right. So number 11 is when we talk about fair housing. This is when I remind my buyers that we have to follow fair housing rules, that we cannot discriminate against anybody for any reason. And I usually tell them what all the protected classes are. I usually go through it. And this is, you'll be surprised. This is where you might see some people go, oh, well, I'm not going to live in that subdivision if it's this ethnic makeup, you know, and this is where you have to say, I'm sorry, I'm not your realtor. That's a fair housing violation. And I don't believe in that. Okay. I also tell them in this paragraph right here that we cannot discriminate on schools or sex offenders. And I know there's another paragraph for all that too. I just like to kind of throw it right here in all the discrimination right here up front, where I basically just say, you know, we have to follow fair housing rules and regulations. And we just don't discriminate against anyone or anything. Okay. As well as like schools or, you know, sex offenders, any of that. Okay. I don't have that knowledge. That's up to you to do. If you have found a subdivision that you really like, or a subdivision you really don't like, it's okay for you to say, I don't like a certain subdivision. I don't like, you know, I like subdivisions with sidewalks. So that's not discriminating against a class or a makeup of a community. That is just telling me what your preference is a community with sidewalks. Okay. Attorney's fees. This is where I basically tell all of the buyers, I say, so with your attorney's fees, this is part of your closing. You need an attorney to make sure that the deed is processed and everything gets recorded properly. And you have to pay your own attorney fee. This is part of your closing costs. All right. However, if we were to find ourselves in some sort of a bad place where we need to seek additional legal advice or obtain some sort of litigation and possibly end up in a court situation, which we really hope you don't have to, I usually throw in there at that point, I've never had that happen. Please don't be my first. Okay. So, you know, kind of make it a little light. I tell them if they have to go down that road and if the judge says that they're the prevailing party, that they are eligible as long as their attorney has asked for it to get their attorney fees and their legal fees reimbursed. Okay. Does that make sense? Okay. Number 13, the buyer does or does not hold an active or inactive real estate license. Okay. I have literally had people say, no, I don't. And then in the course of us talking about things, they'll say, well, when I was licensed back in 1972, and I'm like, huh, okay, that would be an inactive license. Sometimes people don't think that, you know, because they were licensed so many years ago, it still counts. It does still count. This has to be disclosed. And the reason this gets disclosed is because they actually have upper hand knowledge, right? Compared to the average citizen who's never had a license. They have the, they have like the intel. They know how it works, okay? So it has to definitely get disclosed. All right, disclaimers. This is where we're going to go into all of the different disclaimers. Professional services. This is where I say, you know, you are retaining me solely to be a real estate agent. You are not retaining me to be an attorney, a CPA, a mold expert, a home inspector, a well tester, a septic inspector. Like I literally will rattle off a whole bunch of different things that will pertain to their transaction. And I tell them that I have all kinds of references that I'd be happy to give them, but that they are truly just retaining me as the real estate professional. Sorry. And that they need to seek those matters into their own, on their own. All right, so number B is Megan's Law, and this is the sex offender list. I do not recommend anybody to go to that website for your client. Your client has to do their own research. So I make sure I point out to them, Megan's Law, here's the website. This is where it will give you the information about the sex offenders and where they're located. You can also dig deeper and find out the nature of their crime. I will tell you, buyer, I cannot do it, and I cannot do it on your behalf, because what I might say is fine for my family, you might say is not fine for yours. So I encourage you to do your research before we actually write an offer and start house hunting. I also tell them at this point that they should go to the county police website to look up criminal activity for the areas as well. Okay. Questions on that? No? All right. All right. So now we're going into wire fraud. All right. This is a paragraph that I think agents skip over and do not spend enough time on. This paragraph needs a lot of time on. All right. Wire fraud is a real thing. It's a real issue. You need to explain to the clients, this is a real issue, and it is absolutely amazing how well these criminals are able to spoof what looks like your attorney, your lender, or even us. Okay. They get this information and they spoof it and they say, you need to wire X amount of dollars to this account for your closing. And then when you go to do it, you will not get that money back. So buyer, this is what you need to do. Anytime you get any email that says you need to wire funds, I do not want you to call any number on that email or respond to that email. I want you to pick up the phone and call me directly. You have my number, and let me investigate, was that letter really real and sent out? Because I can tell you that Shaheen Law Firm does not send out a letter that says, here's the wiring instructions and here's where everything needs to go, without talking to you first. And a lot of the times they'll do it while on the phone with you, which is the safest way to do it, to make sure that it goes through the proper way. Guys, I'm telling you that this is real. Like, as you can see behind me, people have come in and out. I'm at the association today and I'm hearing all kinds of stories of just this year alone of wire fraud that has happened to other agents' clients. We had a case in our office a year ago, maybe, might have been last summer, where the client didn't want to wait until normal working hours. It was around 4:30 in the morning, got the email and wired their entire life savings. It was hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it went overseas and they never got any of it back. Okay. This is real. This is, you guys have got to like really focus on this and really drive home to them. Do not wire money without talking to me first or having Shaheen Law Firm on the phone. Okay. Questions on that? No? Okay. All right. Service provider referrals. So then this is where I would say, so remember I said I'm not a tax accountant, I'm not, a home inspector, I'm not a mold specialist. I've got lists of people. I would be more than happy to send you references and recommendations. However, you have to know that the names and numbers I'm giving to you, I don't guarantee their work. I don't warrant their work. These are just people that have done really good jobs for past clients and or agents that I work hand in hand with and come highly recommended. If you use any of the providers that I refer to you, I would love to get your feedback so that if they don't do such a great job, we stop referring them. And if they do a fantastic job, we can kind of give them better reviews. Okay. And when I send out referrals, I try to pick at least 2, if not 3 names for the same job being done. All right. And the reason being is because you don't want to get accused of like hiring just your one person and only giving them just one person. If you have a family member, let's just say that, let's just say Mary Jane is married to a home inspector and she keeps referring, the home inspector. we need to have a disclosure because she obviously has a financial interest in that. So we have to put together a disclosure, and that is not in the best interest that you are referring out somebody for a trade in your transaction that is related to you. Okay. That is really not in your best interest, because when it goes wrong on that side, it's going to go wrong on your side also. Okay. So please make sure that we are not doing that, or if you are, you've talked to your broker so we can get the proper disclosures in place. All right, so miscellaneous is basically just saying that you guys, once again, we agree this is a legally binding document, and then I move on to other provisions. Other provisions can be things like maybe they're purchasing the house sight unseen. We have sight unseen verbiage that you would copy and paste and add into this area. That basically says that they will not hold Carly responsible for the condition of the home, that they are choosing to purchase the home sight unseen. And I can show you where all that verbiage is here in a minute, because we do have time. And then this is where your buyer would sign. This is where your broker signs. This is where you put your information, because you're the agent. And then this is where, once again, you put the broker's information if it didn't auto-populate. Sometimes these fields will auto-populate for you.
I have a
Any
question
question?
about, yeah.
Sure.
You mentioned on the other provisions doing stuff, putting in maybe sight unseen. At the time when we're filling this out, we may not know that.
Then you can do an amendment.
Okay.
Yeah. So most things can be corrected with either, if it's an agency agreement with an amendment, or if it's a contract with an addendum. Okay. And I say most, not all, but most things can be fixed. So that does happen, that sometimes we have clients who, at the time we get this filled out and signed, they don't know that they're not going to be in town. And then a house pops up and they want you to go through the house for them and maybe do like a live, feed, like live tour as you're doing the house. Well, when that happens, we would just need to do an amendment to the buyer agency agreement that gives permission to remove all liability off of you. Somebody asked if this is being recorded. The answer is yes, this is being recorded. The question is, did I record it properly? That's the real question. And can we get it pulled down in order to be stored? If it didn't work, then I'll do this again. And like if my recording didn't take, then I will do this again. So that way we can get it recorded and get it saved. The intent for this whole series is to record them so that we can have them for you guys to refer back to multiple times. Okay, any questions or concerns?
This is Lisa. I have a quick question going back to the wire fraud, not necessarily wire fraud, but fraud in general. If a seller says that they are paying, I'm saying this because I had someone tell me that this just happened to them. So they said that their seller was supposed to pay their part of the taxes at closing or prior to closing, and they wrote a check to the county and sent a copy of the check to the title company, and then the closing proceeded and everything was finalized. And then a week later, the seller stopped payment on that check because supposedly they did not want to have to pay for their part of the taxes. And so now the title company is involved. Would that be considered fraud on the seller's part?
Yeah, that's like really loaded. Yes, that would be it would not be wire fraud, but it definitely would be fraudulent behavior, because whenever you sign to close on a home, you are signing saying that you are going to perform to whatever is still outstanding in order for this to be recorded legally. So yes, that would be a case of, if I was representing the purchaser, I would say you need to seek legal counsel immediately. If I was representing the seller, I would say you need to seek legal counsel immediately, because, obviously they didn't perform to the contract per documents they signed at the closing table. And what a lot of clients don't realize is a lot of those documents, there's so much information in there and they're not taking the time to actually read them. I actually would encourage you guys, if you have the documents, if you own a home and you have your documents, you should go through and actually read word for word every single thing in there. Because there's so much stuff in there, like Lisa, like I just said about you are agreeing, seller, to perform to this contract and not to do anything deceitful, right? And now all of a sudden, here they are doing something deceitful, right?
Right. Well, and they said that the seller was actually a realtor. So that tells me that that person knew better. But so the person was asking me, well, at that point, is it upon the title company to clear things up since they proceeded with the closing? Is it upon the purchaser to go through their realtor and get them involved or get the brokerage involved? Or I didn't know what to tell them.
Did you represent either party?
No. Mm-mm.
So then what you basically say is, I was not retained to represent you. I cannot give you any kind of advice on a transaction.
Okay.
Could you tell them that they could file a claim through DPOR?
There we go. You guys disappeared. So you have to be really super duper careful. Like, you are not involved in this transaction at all. And you have to remember there's always two sides to every story, right? And so my recommendation on something to this nature would be to tell them, I'm sorry, I am not involved in this transaction. I'm not privy to any of the information involved in this transaction. And so therefore I cannot give you any advice. However, I would encourage you to seek legal counsel. And then the attorney from that point will tell them that they can't, who to go to. Is this a Virginia case or is this out of state?
No, it's Virginia. And just out of pure curiosity, like, of course, I'm not going to give any advice to this person or respond in any way. This just kind of came up in a casual conversation. They weren't asking my advice necessarily, but I was bringing it up as a question just out of pure curiosity, like how would that play out in that situation?
So not knowing all of the details, I mean, based on what you said, absolutely, there is definitely a case here of a seller failing to perform to the legal documents that they signed. There is definitely a case here for looking further into legal advice and letting attorneys get more involved. And Rachel was absolutely right when, if we were involved, we would have been involved differently, but we would also say, you have an option to file a complaint at DPOR on the seller who is an agent representing themselves. So you got to remember, DPOR is out to protect the public as well as our licenses. They hold our licenses. So because in this particular case, because the seller is a licensed agent, you could file something at DPOR or even at the local association.
Okay.
Okay. So it sounds to me like there's a whole lot involved in not knowing all the details. My biggest advice would be seek legal counsel. And you remember, once a transaction closes, our obligations to our sellers and buyers has ended, right? Now, that doesn't mean that we're going to go, oh, I'm done with you, right? We always help afterwards, but there are certain things we can't do. And that right there, Lisa, that's a giant mess. And I would actually love to hear how that one pans out if you ever find out, because that's a messy one.
Okay.
So, what other questions? I did see the comment of, yay, it's recording. Just because it's recording doesn't mean it's sticking to where I'm recording it to, and that I can bring it back down. So that's gonna be my problem if I can't figure that out. So, any other questions? I know buyer agency, that was the only topic I had today, and that's always kind of a shorter topic. No? Do you guys want to see? I don't think we have anything on tenant agency. Tenant agency is pretty much the same. So when you represent the tenant, That's going to be pretty much the same as what we covered, with exception to the compensation paragraph. The compensation paragraph for a rental is going to be 25% versus 2.5%. Okay. So just keep that in mind.
25% of what?
Of 1 month's rent. And there would be no base fee. We don't do a base fee on rentals.
I thought rentals were split. Well, the rentals I've seen that were split 50-50 between tenant agent and landlord agent. And then within that, it's 50% broker to agent.
So it depends. Not all rentals give 50% to a tenant agent. So if you're getting 50% on a tenant agent, that's a bonus. So I would still put 25%, because remember, we can always take more.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions, concerns? No? All right. Well, thank you, everyone. I appreciate it. Have a great day. Reminder, if you have questions, go see your brokers or feel free to call me.
All right, thank you. Have a good day.
All right, bye.
Thank you.
Bye.